I want to join Martina in thanking you all for being here. I know that wherever part of the world, and I think Martina said 80 or 85 countries you came from, the travel to get here has been challenging, and that adds to our appreciation for your being here. What I'd like to do now is introduce scientist, engineer, and the 17th U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. They like you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a true honor to be here at CERAWeek once again. When I stood here last year, the world was in a very different place. You might assume that I'm talking about geopolitics. Yes, a lot has changed. What I'm thinking about is how people think and talk about energy. We'll talk about geopolitics a bit later with Dan. I believe that we have made great progress in restoring honesty and candor in the dialogue about energy, what it is and what it isn't. The truth is simple. Energy is life, and the world needs massively more of it. President Trump's goal from day one was to get rid of the nonsense and restore common sense. That means turbocharging American energy production, including electricity that's been relatively stagnant for a few decades. Surging energy production will drive down costs for Americans, drive reshoring of manufacturing back to our country, and that in turn will drive up wages. Lower costs, higher wages. In short, that's the economic agenda. The plan is to strengthen our economy, our national security, and lead the world in AI, a truly transformative technology. Last year, I led off by saying we ended the Biden pause on LNG permitting. Since then, over 18 BCF a day of new permits have been approved for LNG exports out of our country. That amount alone, permitted in the last 13 months, would make America by far the world's largest exporter of natural gas. America's superpower is natural gas. It is our largest and cheapest source of electricity. It is our main heating fuel. It is our main industrial fuel for petrochemicals, fertilizer. Natural gas is also the key to the United States to lead in AI and make it economically compelling to bring back energy-intensive manufacturing to our country. Today, pipeline-delivered natural gas is less than 50 cents per gallon diesel in an energy equivalent basis. This is compelling. Oil remains the most important source of energy in the world. It continues to slowly lose market share to a less expensive and more abundant natural gas. But nothing matches the energy density and flexibility of oil. No oil, no modern world. This year we stopped energy subtraction policies. Using my authorities at DOE, we stopped the closure of 17 gigawatts of coal power plants that were slated to prematurely retire. Winter Storm Firm that hit 22 states across the eastern half of our country in late January would have caused significant blackouts and likely led to hundreds of American deaths if we had not kept those 17 gigawatts of coal power on the grid. The grid in many regions was pushed to the edge. Fern was a greater challenge to heating and electricity generation than Uri was, the very intense cold front that hit Texas and my home state of Colorado 5 years ago. I can say it was larger and bigger by one stat that tells that story. That week in late January of this year drove the largest ever withdrawal from storage of natural gas, 360 BCF in 1 week. That's when grids matter, is when they're pushed to the edge. When electricity demand rises high, supply must meet demand, or people die, families get thrown into chaos, and economic damage is severe. Comparing the frigid cold in that week during Fern, the end of January this year, to last year in the same week, so season to season, what was the performance of our electricity generating sources? Natural gas this year produced 47% more electricity during the week of Fern than it did last year in late January. Coal was up 24%. When demand goes up, supply has to go up. Nuclear was flat, and that's what nuclear does. It's unimpacted by the weather, it's rock steady, but it's not great at being variable. It was flat in both cases. Wind power was down 40% in the week of peak demand versus what it delivered last year. That's not helpful. To give one region-specific example, let me talk about New England. I talk about electricity grids and say what matters is that you deliver at peak demand time. That's what matters. Right now, we got hundreds of gigawatts of spare capacity on the grid. Not a problem, but you have to be able to deliver at peak demand time. That's what limits, can you put a new data center? Can you add a new manufacturing center? So what happened at New England? January 27th in the evening, peak demand sign, system stretched to the edge. Wind, solar, and batteries combined delivered 2% of New England's electricity at peak demand time. New England got 3% of its electricity from burning trash and wood. Not much help at the most important time. It's not electrons on the grid, it's being able to deliver when demand is at peak. Launching a true renaissance for nuclear power and nuclear for process heat is a top priority of this administration. President Trump set an aggressive goal, as he tends to do, early in the administration last year, and said he wanted 3 of these next-generation reactors critical by July 4 of this year. Why this year? Because it's our 250th anniversary. That's an aggressive time frame. As I stand here today, we look to be on track to have 3 next-generation nuclear reactors running. They won't be selling electricity into the grid, but all the nuclear systems will be running and generating the heat that would be used to produce electricity by July 4 of this year. That's exciting to me. Thank you. We're reforming permitting for nuclear, as well as major efforts in domestic uranium enrichment, fuel fabrication, reprocessing, and yes, permanent waste disposal sites via a competitive state-level opt-in process. And instead of telling people it will be here and getting that natural reaction, we're asking states to compete who wants to host nuclear innovation campuses. The interest has been tremendous. Many of our national labs and commercial companies are making huge strides towards harnessing fusion energy, something I'm extremely excited about, and via multiple pathways. We are also helping to unleash next-generation geothermal, advancing energy storage, and new solar technologies as well. We are working hard to bring realism to energy policies at home and abroad as well. For most nations, this has been a welcome breath of fresh air. Not entirely so in Europe, which represents 3/4 of the members of the International Energy Agency. But I'm proud of our progress so far. Very candid and productive dialogues. You can see the progress we've made overseas by the dialogues within the International Energy Agency about an emergency release of petroleum stockpiles to offset the flow of oil that is impeded right now coming out of the Straits of Hormuz. In a few dialogues, we quickly got agreement across the board to release 400 million barrels. And the biggest outperformer in the agreed release was Japan. Because where is the problem most intense? It's in Asia. We want to get oil into the Asian refineries and have as little downturn in refining capacity as possible. Our international goal is simple: empower our allies with affordable, reliable, secure energy. Energy trade and infrastructure tend to create commerce, not conflict. There are exceptions. Iran has been a violent, brutal, 47-year exception. Dan and I will likely elaborate on this fact. Ultimately, discussions about energy need to be less political, less ideological, and less cult-like. The conversation should be grounded in two things: humans and math. Being serious about humans means energy policy is about expanding access, improving affordability. That includes empowering Africans with reliable energy, clean cooking fuels, growing electricity access, and clear pathways to economic growth. Limiting energy limits human potential. Expanding energy expands opportunity. I want to close by restating two facts that should guide every serious energy conversation, whatever your vision of the future may be. Number one, energy is life, and the world needs massively more energy. Number two, the modern world is energized by and made of hydrocarbons. Those facts guide me and this administration every day. Our mission remains clear: grow energy, improve American lives, strengthen American security, and strengthen the world. Thank you for what you all do every day to energize the world.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. You covered a lot of ground. As you were speaking, I was remembering that, of course, your background is across the whole energy spectrum. You went to MIT to study nuclear, and then you went to Berkeley to study solar, and then came back to shale. At the beginning and the end, you talked about oil. We'll talk about the things in between electricity and nuclear. But obviously, starting point is what is the impact now, as you see it, of the disruption of the Strait of Hormuz?
So obviously, we have impacted energy flows and other critical material flows coming out the Strait of Hormuz. All of you are thinking and working about that every day. But this is a conflict that we simply couldn't kick down the road one more administration. When this regime in Iran came to power, the first thing it did was take Americans hostage. Then it blew up a few hundred Marines in Beirut in Lebanon. Then it fired missiles at tankers during the 1980s. It supplied IEDs to kill thousands of Americans in the Iran-Iraq war. And of course, it launched, weaponized, and planned the October 7th attack on Israel from Gaza. Like this is a regime that has used its increasing power to trouble energy markets and destabilize its region. And of course, it's getting ever better missiles and a huge conventional arsenal to protect its core goal, which is to build a nuclear bomb. This is just not acceptable. Imagine a world going forward in the long run, with a heavily missile-endowed Iran that has nuclear weapons. The world cannot live in that scenario, and the Trump administration was not willing to kick that can down the road. Short-term disruption right now, but to end a multi-decadal problem and lead to a world that's much more peaceful, can be much more prosperous, and much more securely energized.
So how do you see the market reacting to this disruption?
Markets do what markets do. Prices went up to send signals to everyone that can produce more, please produce more. The prices have not risen high enough yet to drive meaningful demand destruction, but Americans and energy entrepreneurs around the world are ingenious. So things are being done. We've done some pragmatic solutions to take floating barrels that are waiting to unload in China and help them move into ports in other nations in Asia to go into refineries. But these are mitigants of a situation that's temporary.
Right. You obviously, as you said, got the IEA framework to release the strategic stocks. as you look around the world, how fast are they flowing into the market?
United States oil from our stocks started flowing last Friday afternoon. I saw in the press, they can't do it for 3 weeks. It's never been done before. Oil started to flow out of U.S. stocks last Friday afternoon. Japan has also moved quickly. Some nations will move more slowly. Some nations don't even have oil and gas stocks.
Yeah.
But this is what the IEA was created for,
Absolutely.
right? It was used 4 years ago to lower gasoline prices to help election results. That's not what that's not what strategic petroleum reserve stocks are for. This is what they're for.
And does the volume vary that comes out of the strategic stocks, the SPR? I mean, what's the level of flow?
The rate of flow?
Yeah.
It's going to be between 1 million and 1.5 million barrels a day out of U.S. stocks.
Right.
And we'll get, possibly close to 3 million barrels total.
Yeah. Have you been able to think yet what the long-term impacts of this will be on energy supply and how markets and thinking will change?
Yeah, so of course, if you shrink storage permanently, that bids up a premium in prices and it makes markets less stable. So another difference from the release in 2022 is we didn't sell the oil like they did. They just sold the barrels and then they were gone. We're actually engaging in swap contracts. We're releasing barrels today, and the first deals we made, for every barrel we release, we're going to get back more than 1.2 barrels of oil that'll go back into the reserve next year.
Right.
So at the end of this conflict, at the end of next year, we'll have meaningfully more oil in the SPR than we have today.
Right. Turning to another part of the world, of course, you were recently in Venezuela. What's your takeaway?
Wow, this is an experiment in geopolitics. Can we take a country that for more than 25 years has skidded downhill into criminality, poverty, drug running? 9 million people left Venezuela. And for the first time in history, 6 of those 9 million people left a relatively poor country and moved to poorer countries in South America. That's how bad the situation was in Venezuela. But its impact on our hemisphere, its impact in the United States, gangs, drugs, and guns coming in quantities to our country, we figured that has to end. There have been sanctions on Venezuelan oil for years. We just enforced them, an actual quarantine. That changed the U.S. leverage to drive Venezuela towards improved behavior. It's not a Jeffersonian democracy yet, but it's meaningfully better than it was 3 months ago, meaningfully better. And in Venezuela, the people are thrilled. They can't run up and cheer. I had a lot of people pull me aside, thank you for being here, thank you for being here. In polls in Venezuela, well over 75% of the population is thrilled with what America has done, and they finally see a light towards progress. And oil production's up 200,000 barrels a day already.
So what's your interaction with the interim government been like?
It's constructive. Think of what happened, right? This is a government that's flouted all the laws, certainly flouted and denigrated the United States, but they saw their leader and his wife, who were the leaders of a drug and gun running organization, now imprisoned in the United States to face trial. They're a little concerned about that. So I went down with a very positive gear. We did not talk about the past, except briefly. We just talked about where we are and what the United States wants and what's good for Venezuela, and most of those overlap. Having more secure rule of law, reducing criminality, growing Venezuelan production, changing labor laws, ultimately court systems. There's a lot to be done in Venezuela, but if you're one of the leaders of Venezuela right now, you want to make sure you're on sides with the United States, because we control the flow of funds from oil sales back into their country, and ultimately there's going to be an election. So you probably want to show improvement to your citizens. So it's just an entirely different incentive structure today in Venezuela than they had before.
Were you able to have discussions with them about what they need to do in terms of the terms for companies coming to invest?
We did. They had quickly on their own, even before I arrived, they changed the hydrocarbon law, rewrote a new law, and passed it through their assembly. So they are moving quickly. I brought some feedback that the law is much improved from where they were before, but still had some concerns for me about the road to international arbitration, still had wide bands that you can say are discretion for different deals, but can also be avenues of corruption. So, and we engage in those dialogues. They said, we're all about feedback, talk to us. Secretary Burgum, one of my colleagues from Interior and National Energy Dominance Council, he went down as well and expanded those dialogues into mining and minerals. Venezuela's got tremendous resources there. But they have been very productive, business-like discussions. I think we are aligned that moving Venezuela in a positive direction is in everyone's best interest, almost everyone's best interest, but certainly people that are in power now, certainly the citizenry of the country, and certainly in the United States and all the neighbors in the Western Hemisphere.
Right. So let me pivot now to the other main subject of your remarks, which was electricity. You talked about Winter Storm Fern and the reaction. More broadly, what are you focused on in terms of electricity?
Pragmatism, just simple pragmatism. Uri came down, everyone in Texas that's local here remembers it. It hit my state of Colorado too. Intense cold. 4.5 million people lost access to electricity. Over 200 people died. Fern was much bigger than Uri. It hit 22 states, pushed the electricity grid from Florida to New England to the edge. And what we tried to do as that storm arrived, and what we had done in the year before, was pragmatism. We're not going to preach to some climate god and think making our electricity more expensive and less reliable somehow is going to change the temperature of the planet by 1/100 of a degree 3 generations from now. That became lower on the priority list, keeping affordably and securely keeping the lights on. In Florida, as they got pushed to the edge, schools might have been closed on a Monday morning, but we had sent out word beforehand. There's 35 gigawatts of backup generators sitting in our country that just sit there. And when that facility loses power, they turn on. What about turning them on before the grid goes down? So we brought on tons of backup generation in Florida. It meant electricity service was uninterrupted. Nowhere was short of electricity because of generation assets or long distance transmission. There was ice that formed on the lines in sort of Tennessee and Alabama. So we had some places, less than 1 million lost electricity, but that was ice on lines. It was not a shortage of generation. So permitting things quickly, just bringing in common sense.
Well, I know that data centers are on your mind. I know they're also now being built on the land of the Department of Energy. Can you explain what you're doing?
Yeah, so if we're going to win in AI, we have to build a lot of electricity generation in the US fast. We haven't done that in a while. And with these Clean Power Plant 1.0 and 2.0 rules, no one really wanted to build a new gas or coal generation plant because at some time in the near future, you were going to have to capture the CO2 emissions from it, use 1/3 of the power from the power plant to capture emissions, and then dispose them in quantity underground, which has never been done at scale. We're humans. We probably can figure that out. But do you really want to spend $100 for something that might give $1 a benefit? That's not a business-like attitude. So by clearing out a lot of the morass that disincentivize people from building things, and at DOE, we have over 1 million acres of land as part of our national labs. So
I think people don't think about the national labs as also being landowners.
17 national labs across the country, and some of them are gigantic. Idaho National Lab and Hanford Lab in Washington State. They're just huge estates of land. Part of our lab facilities are on it, but a lot of unused land. We said, hey, we're pragmatic, we'll do deals. 300 responses, including Lisa Su from AMD flew out 48 hours later and said, we'll start building next month in Oak Ridge. Chris, let's do a deal. What do you want? Said, I want compute.
Right. So you talked about 3 reactors that are going to go critical in July. Clearly, these reactor development didn't start when the Trump administration came in. I mean, what are these SMRs?
Oh, yes. These are small SMRs that can be built and constructed quickly. Fortunately, in American free market society, there's a few dozen small modular reactor companies pursuing different technologies, different sizes. We welcome it all. The marketplace will sort it out. But there's small reactors that can be constructed quickly, and by using DOE authorities with NRC at our side, we are just running through, as these reactors are constructed, all the safety systems to permit them to run. They'll run temporarily, but they will demonstrate how their nuclear systems work and how they can generate heat. In fact, we flew a 5-megawatt reactor from Los Angeles in a military transport plane to Utah. Funny that you would build an energy asset in California, but of course fly it out before you could turn it on. But that'll turn on in Utah, and then we've got a couple others that'll start in Idaho, and there's 11 total reactors in that queue that in the next 12 months we will get going.
So this will really speed up the development.
Massively speed up. Not just in the US, but abroad. All of our allies are very interested in two things, most of all from the United States. Natural gas now and as fast as you can, and nuclear technology. We want to build nuclear reactors in our country, or our island nation, or our isolated communities, or for our next generation manufacturing or AI data centers. How soon can you bring nuclear power plants? But nuclear's just been slow and hasn't moved for decades. We want to get it moving quickly, so it can win economically and win on timescales.
Right. Secretary, join me in thanking Secretary Wright for joining us this morning. Thank you. That's great.